Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are tuning in. Thank you so much for joining me today for my next session, obviously, Facebook Live on embracing change. This is part 2 of a 4-part series that I'll be offering around the teachings of change and impermanence and how we can find our comfort, our home in the midst of this ever-changing reality that we find ourselves in. And so just a bit of an announcement then before I get into the topic at hand. The reason that I'm offering these Tuesday evening here in Thailand sessions on embracing change is that it's a run-up to an online meditation program that I'm going to be offering. It's a 9-week program entitled Embracing Change and Impermanence. There are 2 sections if you're interested in this course. There's a section A that is offered Tuesday evenings from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. East Coast Standard Time. And there's a section B that's on Wednesdays from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. East Coast Standard Time. So I recognize that those are 3-hour blocks. That's a lot of time to sit. So they're structured with a nice 20-minute break in the middle. We do about an hour and 20 minutes. Then we have about a 20-minute break and then another hour and 20 minutes. And it's nice to have the 3 hours. You know, we have the opportunity perhaps to go out into breakout rooms and to meet with the other participants and to really come together as a community in that 3-hour section. So a little bit more about the retreat then. The sessions are formatted to include a variety of different types of guided meditations that I'll be offering. There'll be ample time for question and answer sessions, lots of interactive discussions, like I mentioned, with the breakout groups and as a full group. There's also an invitation to sign up for study pods that meet at a different time over the week, according to however, what's ever comfortable for the participants. So that invitation goes out about a week before the retreat launches, and hopefully you get settled into a study group. That can be very, very helpful as a way of coming together outside of the course to really reflect on how these teachings are landing and how the practices are going. The Embracing Change retreat and really everything that I offer is offered in a secular voice. I don't preach any particular religion. You don't have to be of any faith at all to get great benefit from these practices. So everybody's welcome from all religions, all faiths, or no religion. That's also good. That's fine. And everything that I offer is offered within a trauma sensitive framework. I've done a lot of work around trauma healing and been certified by David Trelevin in advanced trauma sensitive mindfulness, and so I use those skills to provide a safe container for all of those who are engaging in everything that I offer, in particular these retreats. Kind of in the spirit of that, the group numbers for the retreat are kept quite low. I try to cap each section at 15 people. And that's done intentionally so that we can really get to know each other. We come together, as I mentioned, as like a cohort and really cultivate a certain type of community energy that I find very, very helpful for engaging in these really, really delicate teachings. Also included in the 9-week course is an unlimited access to myself for one-to-one sessions. And I find this very important for the online courses to have the opportunity to connect with me, if it's a different course, then with a qualified facilitator to help process or to help allow the teachings to land in a helpful and healthy way. The amount of participation in the retreat is completely up to the participant, however you're comfortable. All of the sessions are recorded, and the recordings are shared privately only with the retreat participants. And I do that as a way of holding that safety container so that we can feel very free to speak our mind, to share what's coming up for us as a result of the practices and so forth. So there's no need to attend all of the sessions. I know 9 weeks is a long time to commit. You might feel like you might miss a few, and that's fine, no worries. Some people sign up and do the whole program at their own pace, and you're welcome to do that too. You do miss out a little bit on that community energy that I was speaking about earlier, but if you feel like you'd like to do the course at your own pace and your own time, you're welcome to do that too. And then some people do sign up and make all of the sessions too. So really it's as you're comfortable. So if you'd like to find out more about this 9-week online meditation program that I'm offering, it runs March 1st to April 26th. So it's coming up, it's less than a month away. And again, it's 9 weeks. We meet once a week for 9 weeks. Do go visit the website www.suchsweetthunder.org for more information about the retreats and for really anything else that I'm offering these days. Okay. So I'd like to go ahead and do a little bit of a guided meditation here, and this meditation will be on the topic of embracing change. So if you would then just get into your most comfortable meditation posture, whatever that might mean for you. And ring the bell. And I'll guide us through this about 10-minute long meditation. And so the invitation here is just to arrive into this present moment. There are many ways of arriving into the experience of the here and now, and for this practice I think we can just start with the experience of breathing. And so the invitation then is to bring awareness to the breath itself and how the breath moves through the body as you inhale and exhale. You might notice the rising and falling of the abdomen with each breath. Getting in touch with the actual felt experience of the abdomen rising and falling. There may be some tension or tightness, warmth or pulsating. Noticing how the sensations may change from the inhalation to exhalation. And so right away we're connecting with the felt experience of change. Simply noticing the changing field of sensation at the abdomen as it rises and falls with each breath. And then in the next breath or two, we could bring awareness to the rib cage expanding and contracting. And again, noticing the felt experience there. Expansion, tightness, tension on the in-breath, and perhaps contraction, rest, softening on the out-breath. There's no wrong sensation or right sensation. We're just noticing what arises for us, the felt experience of the present moment. And in the next breath or two, when it feels good to do so, we could bring this exploration to the shoulders. And so the invitation there is to connect directly to the felt experience at the shoulders. Just noticing whatever is there. Warmth, tightness, pulsating, softening. And in the next breath or two, we could bring this awareness to the back, just noticing the back as it moves in and out with each breath. And there again, connecting with the felt experience of the breathing process. Perhaps noticing sensations of clothing moving to adjust with the breath as the back moves in and out. You might also notice how the body straightens up slightly on the in-breath and leans forward slightly on the out-breath. And while we're here noticing the breathing process, you might notice how the temperature changes from cooler to warmer at the nose and the back of the throat. And so while we're here resting with the breath, the invitation is to just notice how what we think of as breath is really a composite of hundreds or even thousands of tiny sensations. The breath moving through the body. When we let go of the concept breath or the word, connecting directly to the felt experience of the breath. You can never breathe the same breath twice. Always changing breath. And while we're here noticing this ever-changing experience we call breathing, you might notice the mind goes into thinking or distraction. That's very normal if that happens. Just labeling that with the word thinking, letting the distractions go and gently returning back to the present moment. Noticing here too that our awareness is in also a constant state of change, from distraction to clarity, to busyness, to dullness, excitedness, calmness. The mind, too, is in a constant state of change, just like the breath. And so while we're here resting with the experience of the breath, this ever-changing experience we think of as breath, resting too, noticing that ever-changing field we think of as mind. And the invitation then is to bring awareness to any sounds that might be available in this present moment experience. Just taking a moment or two to listen to the soundtrack of this experience we call meditation. You might notice quiet, subtle sounds or loud sounds. There might be sounds generated by machinery or electronics, appliances, a heater, an air conditioning, the hum of a computer or a refrigerator. There might be a television nearby, a car passing, an airplane flying overhead. You might notice sounds generated by nature, such as a dog barking, or wind blowing through the trees, or rain on the roof, sound of bird songs, a conversation nearby. Regardless of the quality of sound, the origin of sound, the invitation here is to simply notice how the sounds arise. They stay for a while, and then they pass. And in their passing, they leave space for other sounds, or perhaps silence. The aural field is a really, really great place to observe change. Perhaps noticing how the ever-changing field of sound cascades through the backdrop of silence. Simply noticing how, although the bird songs might sound similar, they're not quite the same. And indeed, how this present moment might sound a lot like 5 minutes ago. It's still not the same. The soundtrack is ever changing, ever evolving, providing a new auditory experience moment to moment. And so in the next breath or two, we'll begin to shift away from this guided meditation and back into a conversational space. And I'll cue that by ringing the bell 3 times. Okay. Well, thank you for joining me in that guided meditation. I hope that was helpful. And if you wish to stay there longer and explore that deeper, press pause now on the recording, and you're free to stay in that practice as long as you wish. But for those of us who are here live, I'm going to go ahead and push into today's talk on embracing change. And just to be completely transparent, I'm feeling quite under the weather today. I'm not quite well health-wise, so I'm a little bit tongue-tied, so I apologize for that, but hopefully things will flow a little smoother. Just have a sip of water. So just to recap a little bit on what we spoke about last week. Now, you don't have to have seen last week's episode to get the full benefit. Each of these sessions are standalone sessions. But if you wish to go back and visit that one, if you missed it, it's there on my Instagram, it's on my YouTube, and on Facebook as well. So I'll just kind of reframe that because I'll be adding on to that as we go here. So last week we explored a guided meditation where I brought us quite detailed through the body and connecting with the actual felt experience of the body beyond any concepts or words or thoughts. And in doing that, we connect with the felt experience of change. And we did something quite similar today with this meditation where we entered into the practice through the breath. And then the invitation there was to connect directly with what the breath feels like, letting go of any concepts or thoughts about breath. Just actually feel the present moment experience. And we also then explored the experience of sound and how the aural field, our auditory experience, is an experience of constant change. It may not seem like it sometimes when the neighbors are doing construction or when, there's a song that we don't like on the radio. And that is a really great example of how our nervous system takes a changing experience and freezes it into a permanent experience. And I did speak a little bit about that last week, but I'll just underscore it here. Whenever we find ourselves wrestling with the present moment, struggling against the present moment, it's a pretty clear indicator that we're not recognizing the impermanent nature of the present moment, right? If I, for example, have a toothache and I'm really, really struggling against that toothache, probably somewhere I have this belief that that toothache will last forever. That I'm wrestling with it out of fear that I will always feel that way. And so, that old cliche, this too shall pass, which is so healing. It's cliche for a reason, because it's so helpful to recognize that this too shall pass. And even the this too shall pass, that cliche phrase, is a little misleading. Because we have the this too, the first part of the phrase, shall pass, right? And I remember I was talking with a student one-on-one once, and they were having some really challenging times, and I was really gently trying to guide them through some impermanent practices. And the end of the session came, and they were on their way out the door, and I said, yeah, this too shall pass, just hold on to that. And he said, or they said, yeah, this too shall pass like a kidney stone. And that really struck me. Because, yeah, we recognize logically that this too shall pass. But why is it that we continue to struggle? And that phrase, this too, it still allows something permanent that will eventually pass, right? The this too is a noun going to the verb of passing. So I prefer just to say passing, because every experience, every moment, every thought, every emotion, every feeling, every sensation has a beginning, and as soon as it's begun, it's changing and evolving and morphing and shifting and finally dissolving, like that. And we struggle with these experiences because we mistake the impermanence to be permanent. It gives us something to wrestle against. And that in that very wrestling, sometimes that feels good. It makes us feel alive. That we can have this tension. It gives us something to push against. So in a way that almost, that sense of struggle kind of feels good for the nervous system. It gives our ego something to thrive on. But we want to let that go. Because although the ego is, healthy at a certain level, there's so much more. We can live with a type of freedom where we're not struggling against the unpleasant, and we're not grasping and clinging to the present, to the pleasant rather. So let's look a little bit more about this process of change and growth. That's how we find our home there, is we become intimate with that process. So there's some good news around impermanence, right? Like I said, I have a toothache, I'm not feeling very well. I know this is going to change. I know this is already passing. I feel different now than I did 2 minutes ago, and I'm going to feel different in another 2 minutes. So it's this constant process that we're in. Change, impermanence is what allows healing to happen. It's what allows growth to happen. And if we really follow that logic through, change, impermanence is what allows life to happen. I mean, consider the opposite as kind of an absurd thought experiment. What would life be like if everything was permanent? Wouldn't be much happening, right? And so it's not the impermanence, I think, that we struggle against so much. It's the fear of the unknown. Because it's not so much impermanence that we don't like. It's only certain things that change. We want the toothache to go away. We want to feel better. We want to, we want change in our life that happens, that helps us feel good. We want to learn, perhaps. We want to grow, perhaps. But we don't want to lose our youth. We don't want to face death and dying of ourself, of our own body, and of loved ones, right? We don't want to face climate change. So there's a certain type of denial that happens around impermanence. And so the 9-week course that I'm offering on Change and Impermanence will be exploring in great detail the meditation that I opened today with, the last week's meditation, and a whole series of meditations that come from Tibet and from India and Thailand, mostly from the Buddhist tradition, where we'll be really going deeply into the experience of change. We'll explore each one of the senses. There we explored the breath, we explored the mind, which is considered one of the sense doors in Buddhism, and we explored the sense of sound. But that same type of exploration can be done with all of the senses. And so I invite you all to pick one of the sense doors and spend maybe an hour just exploring how perhaps your visual field changes. Especially if you're sitting outside, like in a nice park, or if it's if it's winter in your environment, perhaps just by the window, and just watching that ever-changing visual field. And when you can really get into the subtlety of that, it's quite something. You start to notice how the leaves shimmer with the blowing of the wind. You start to notice how, if you can be near some water, how the patterns on the water continually change moment to moment. Of course, clouds through the sky constantly changing. I was fortunate enough to live in Denver, Colorado, actually in Boulder, Colorado, just outside of Denver for several months, some years ago. And right in the valley of the Rocky Mountains. And so one can just sit and watch the clouds pass over the Rockies all day. It's so beautiful. And it's just this constant, ever-changing visual field. You might just watch how the sun passes over the sky, and you can watch the shadows change on the ground. Whether it's a table, or there's people talking, or cars passing, just watching the shadows passing by on the ground as the sun moves from morning to afternoon to evening, dusk, and so forth. And all of the sense doors provide this opportunity. So that's one of the practices we'll be exploring in this 9-week course that I'm offering beginning in March. Also, another practice that you could do on your own without joining the course is to notice the ending of things and notice what it feels like when you notice the ending. And it could be the simplest of things, like noticing the end of the out-breath as you breathe out. So beginning, middle, end. Just noticing what the out-breath feels like at the end of it. And then marking the beginning of the in-breath, beginning, middle, and end of the in-breath, and then noticing how the in-breath ends and turns around to the out-breath. And so the reason why we pay attention to the very point of ending is that it's always a point of beginning. And as each experience comes to an end and gives birth to a new beginning, there's a feeling there. That's the feeling of change. That's what the invitation of all of these practices is, to really become intimate with that feeling. It has a particular flavor to it. And as I was saying, these changes, it's happening all the time, all around us, every moment. And once we, really take the time to experience that, to embrace that, to feel into that, it's very liberating. There's a lot of freedom in that. So there's a story in the Buddhist tradition, and I'm just going to paraphrase the story. I don't have the text in front of me right now. I don't recall which text this comes from, but I do know it's in the Buddhist tradition. So the Buddha, the story unfolds. He's in front of an assembly, and there might have been, probably a few hundred people there, if not more. And his attendants, Ananda and Ananda was there, and Sariputra was there as well. And several other hundred practitioners were there. And the assembly's, kind of quiet, and people are meditating and so forth. And a fellow barges in from the back of the room and walks up to the platform where the Buddha would have been sitting, and doesn't bow or anything, but he walks straight up to the Buddha and starts yelling at him and insulting him, really getting up in his face. You're a fake, you're a phony, you don't know what you're talking about, and all of this stuff, and being really, really offensive. And then finally, he can't get the Buddha to react. The Buddha's just calmly noting what's happening, just watching this person hurl offensive language at him. No reaction at all from the Buddha. So finally, the offensive person gets so mad because he can't get a rise from the Buddha that he spits in his face. And then he turns around and runs out the door, basically, before the other people there could have followed him or accosted him. And so that's the end of that scene. And then in the next scene of the story, we see this man. He's in bed alone, and he's trying to sleep. And the only thing that's going through his mind over and over again is how the Buddha remained so quiet and calm while he was, yelling and screaming at him. And he going over his mind, why didn't he respond? Why didn't he react? Why couldn't, he's untouchable. And he started to realize, that was really a lot of wisdom that the Buddha was showing there, simply by holding that space of non-reactivity. And so the man is really, taken by this, and he starts to really, contemplate the implication of that. And this goes on for a couple of weeks, and he gets no sleep. Every night he's tossing and turning, going over that scene in his mind over and over again. So finally he goes back to the Buddha. And again, there's a full assembly. Ananda's there, Sariputra's there, the whole group, hundreds of practitioners are there. And the man, now he enters into the room and he approaches the stage, but now he reverently bows in front of the Buddha and actually begins to bathe his feet. The Buddha stands up. He's kind of surprised, and he stands up. He says, hey, you don't need to do that. What are you doing? And the man says, I just want to apologize. I came here 2 weeks ago and I started screaming obscenities at you, and how can I ever, make this up to you? And the Buddha says, are you that? I don't think you're that same person. You're not that person that was here 2 weeks ago. And the man was kind of taken aback. He's like, yeah, that was me. I remember being here yelling at you. The Buddha says, no, clearly you are a much different person now. And 2 weeks have passed. I too am a much different person now than I was 2 weeks ago. I've had many, many experiences. I've taught many, many students. I've had many rich practice experiences. And I can confidently say that I am not the same person I was 2 weeks ago. And I can confidently say, by the way you've appeared here today in front of me, that you are not the same person you were 2 weeks ago. So seeing is that how you're a new person and how I'm a new person, perhaps we can just start where we are and meet each other where we are today. And so this person, who was the offensive person, is so taken aback by the compassion and the wisdom that the Buddha is showing him that he immediately becomes a student, and within weeks he becomes an enlightened master himself. And that's how the story ends. So there's a lot in that story. I'm not going to unpack the whole thing here today. I do want to mention that I'm not promoting, complete and utter passivity. And I don't think that's what the Buddha was doing there, although I could see how it could be mistaken for that. But if you really read between the lines, I think you might see that the Buddha was completely engaged in what was happening there. But in that engagement, recognizing that I don't need to hear these words. This person is not upset with me. There's something else happening with this person that has nothing to do with me. And was able to hold that space of non-reactivity for that person's words to move through him, and hold that space with compassion. It ended up changing that person for the better. That takes a lot of training. And I am all for healthy boundaries. I think healthy boundaries are great. And it is really an act of self-compassion and kindness for oneself to have healthy boundaries. So again, I'm not saying that we should embark on this type of passivity, but rather to be completely engaged in the present moment, recognizing that this present moment, although predicating the next present moment, it is also at the same time changing. And so that's the point of focus. What am I adding to this present moment that's going to predicate the next present moment? I think that's what we can look at there. In that story, the Buddha is, holding his heart open and compassionately holding space with wisdom for this person to let go of whatever they needed to let go of. Because in that moment, that was what the Buddha could offer to that present moment to influence how the next present moment was going to unfold. And so this embrace of impermanence is an invitation to a type of situational ethics, if you will. We don't ever have the pat answer. When A happens, I'll do B. Because there's no room for impermanence there. There's no room for change in that type of model. We're invited rather to meet the present moment exactly as it's unfolding. And as we are meeting the present moment in that way, if we can bring loving kindness to that present moment, if we can bring compassion to that present moment, if we can bring joy and equanimity, or generosity or gratitude or compassion or wisdom, if we can bring those types of qualities to this ever-changing field, then whoosh, it goes into that field and gives birth to something that's at least predicated from that. And that's the power of impermanence. That's the good news, is that we always have an opportunity to bring a little bit of kindness, to bring a little bit of humor, to bring a little bit of generosity, of gratitude to each moment planting seeds as we go. I'm going to check my notes here. I make these notes and I don't follow them really. I haven't followed my notes at all here today except for the notes on the retreat. Yeah, I think that's all I've got here today. I'll leave some for next week as well. So thank you for joining me. If you are interested in signing up for the retreat on embracing change and impermanence, again, the information is all on my website, suchsweetthunder.org. It's going to be a great program. I'm really looking forward to it. It's a 9-week program. We launch March 1st or March 2nd, depending on where you are in the world. Have a great week, everyone. I'll be back on Thursday morning in Thailand offering a talk on compassion, gearing up for another retreat that I'm offering on compassion. But if you're just tuning into this series on change, then I will see you all in about a week. Okay, be well, everyone. Thank you so much. I'll ring the bell to close us out and make it official. Thanks.